I'm 40 now. Only in the last few years have I gone back to painting and art and drawing and getting that confidence back. So I think a big part of my journey has been feeling that creativity, like what lights me up when no one else in the world is telling me who to be or who I can't be. I lost so many years not being creative. So I think that's part of like my personal mission is everyone is creative. Like, do not let anyone tell you otherwise.
Welcome to In Her Words. This podcast is for women navigating through change, career, identity, motherhood, and just figuring out what's next. I'm Roberta Dombrowski, host of In Her Words and founder of Learn Mindfully. Each episode, I sit down with women who are asking big questions, navigating transitions, and trying to make sense of life as it shifts. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just need space to be real. Let's get into it. Joining me today, I have Lia Fetterhoff. She is a director of product design and research at Pathstream, where she builds learning and career tools for frontline workers navigating real-life transitions. With almost 2 decades of experience in user experience, team leadership, she blends design thinking with heart-centered strategy to create systems that empower growth. Outside of tech, she's a creativity coach, artist, and creator of Swishy. She lives in California with her husband and 2 kids, where you can often find her painting in vibrant hues or journaling with a cup of coffee before everyone else wakes up. Welcome, Lia, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Roberta. Excited to be here.
And that cup of coffee sounds like it took place today, too.
Oh, it's still happening. So
I got my tea, too. So I'm excited to dive in with you today. You are someone who, from our first conversation, really speak and embodies creativity. And I'm curious, as we dive in, what does creativity mean to you? What's it all about for you?
great question. I've always considered creativity and curiosity as interchangeable. And what I mean by that is, to me, creativity is what can I possibly bring out into the world that's never existed before? I love the thrill of like a blank page, a blank canvas. It's just an invitation to like put something there. And it doesn't matter. I've gotten to the point in my life where I've stopped being a perfectionist. I used to worry about like, oh no, what's that first mark going to look like? And now I'm like, well, let's see what happens if I do this or that. And I think it's that mindset shift that draws me to both creativity and the pursuit of it in all the things in life. And a lot of it is curiosity softens that. It makes it approachable so it doesn't feel like, right, like I have to make this grand masterpiece. No, like maybe it will, maybe it won't be. But being able to just create is like what it's all about.
I love that duality too, because when I'm working with clients, often they get stuck in the perfectionism loop. And I'm always like, well, what are you curious about? Like, because it shifts your brain and the side of your brain that you're thinking. You go from like over analyzing, analytical to just like, oh, what is possible? What could be there? I'm curious, how did you kind of get started down this path of creativity? Did it start when you were younger or yeah, how did that come out?
The story I like to tell is so yes, right? I think when we're all kids, we don't have all these responsibilities, these people telling us what they expect of us and how, we should live our lives and grow up. There is this uninhibited draw to whatever it is that interests us, right? So when I was little, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I really dreamed or envisioned like, oh, like I think I could talk to animals. I can sense them. Or, it was like that curiosity about nature. There was curiosity about music. Early, like when I was like in 6th, 7th grade, I wrote a lot of poems, songs. I'm like, maybe one day I'll be a singer. I was really into Sailor Moon, this anime show. And, I'd like draw, sketch characters. So there was a lot of that. And I think, funnily enough, what has come full circle is the name Swishy. Like I always envisioned I would have this brand called Swishy as kind of like a creative production studio. There was this artist, Flavia, who created a lot of inspirational quotes, journals, books. So I want to be like her, but more fun. So kind of like an Elisa Frank kind of vibe. I didn't quite get there because what had happened was in middle school, I got a B in art class as a straight A student.
Oh no.
That broke my heart. And it was because I couldn't, like sketch this wolf properly. And I think that was the first time I got judged for creativity, for art.
Uh-huh.
And I shied away from like actual art. I dabbled, right? Like over the years, it became like, okay, I can do websites. Websites was part of one of my first jobs after college. And then I started taking graphic design classes, but for a long time in between middle school through like, what do I want to do for the rest of my life and actually getting to my first job, there was more of a fear of creativity. Like I'm not that. I'm not creative because, like and it's crazy how one teacher, one grade, one moment, right, as a child could kill that for someone. And it was, and I'm 40 now, and it's like only in the last few years have I gone back to painting and art and drawing and getting that confidence back. So I think a big part of my journey has been feeling that creativity, like what lights me up when no one else in the world is telling me who to be or who I can't be, hearing that message and then coming back to creativity. Like, I lost so many years not being creative, right? I mean, even as a designer, right? Like, yes, it's creativity in a way and it's constrained. But the creativity that I felt I wasn't creative was the unconstrained self expression. And yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with no, like I never want anyone else to feel that way. So I think that's part of like my personal mission is everyone is creative. Like, do not let anyone tell you otherwise.
Yeah, what you're saying really resonates with me because I went to art school for undergrad. I
Did
studied
you? Oh my
photography and
gosh. I
media
did not know
arts.
this.
Yeah. I studied photography, biomedical photography. And so it was like taking pictures of eyeballs and like macro, micro. And I was in my second year and we were having these critiques. And I had this like awakening, and I was like, I don't want to be in a lab all day taking pictures and like not interacting with humans. So I transitioned into media arts. But I felt like that was a pivotal moment for me where it's like when you're constantly in critiques, your work is essentially getting judged. And I loved photography in school growing up. Like that's what I loved doing. And since that time, in college, I haven't touched a
No,
DSLR.
that breaks my
Yeah.
heart. Okay, after this, Roberta, you have to go take a photo.
I will. I do on my phone. I feel like cameras are also different these days than when like 15 years ago. But what you said about the act of like getting judged for what you're doing, how did you like almost crawl out of that, so to speak?
It took a while. So, from my journey of my first job after college, so I was an admin assistant and I had one of those moments like, is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Like, because I could easily fall into the trap of just this 9 to 5, just doing things for other people, like doing all the things, but not really going deep into anything. Like, that's what, you do as an admin assistant, right? Like, you run the office. And I couldn't see myself doing that. So that's where my curiosity kicked in. Like, well, what could I see myself doing? And I spent that first year, yeah, taking community college classes at night for typography, for graphic design, for printing, like on an actual printing press. And then websites were ramping up at the time. So I started finding projects. So friends of friends would have me help out with websites. I started to build a portfolio. And then I started being drawn to new media graphic design. And I knew that wasn't quite it yet. I had my undergrad was in psychology, actually. So totally not art related, but wanting to understand people's behaviors. And I remember in one of those graphic design classes I took, we had a guest speaker who was talking about UX. And this was like back in like 2008, 2000, like 9 at the time, like super early stage for, user experience. And what she said spoke to me and kind of bridging the gap between creating something and asking people about what you created, or, like, how does it actually work? Can people intuitively use it? And I remember even in my job, as my next job was a marketing communications coordinator, so creating newsletters, creating our department's website. And I would ask my coworker next to me, like, hey, I designed this website, show me how you would, download the newsletter. And I saw her struggle. And that was one of those, like, oh, like, this feels pretty good, to get the feedback before I just like launched the thing. And from there, I enrolled in a master's program for web design and new media. So doing more formally like usability lab testing with one-way mirrors, the
Yeah.
whole eye tracking tools, and then learning the formal design process, right? And then what it means to discover and be divergent, and then how do you get requirements out of that? So learning everything from the tools at the time, so like Photoshop, Illustrator, even like Flash was pretty big, to like code, and all those pieces. I think, and then for a good time, design to me was the closest I could get to that type of creativity. Finally, like fast forward, like 10, 12 years later, I got laid off. And then that's when I asked myself that question again, like, what could I be doing? Like, if I don't get an opportunity like this again until I retire, what could I be spending my time on? And then that's when I'm like, well, let me just try painting again, because of my biggest life reflections. I'm like, that's the one that like got away. And then I did a year-long program. And even when I found my next full-time job, I still carved out weekends to produce paintings. And I'm pretty proud of my journey where I'm at. Like, I still feel like I'm finding my creative voice. I haven't quite found like the paintings I do yet, but immensely like the confidence that's rebuilt in me for just any creativity is how I got that back.
I love the journey that you just described and even the confidence you mentioned, because I find that creativity or even like different mediums, whether it's drawing, painting, whatever it might be, is a vehicle for our intuition
Yeah.
and trusting our gut. And it sounds like maybe that came back when you did when you dove back into painting again.
Ooh, yeah, I got goosebumps there. Yes. It was definitely the intuition and just the trust, right? I think you only get so much when, once again, design, like someone lays out, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, here's what we have time for, here's when the deadline is, right? It's creativity with all those constraints. With something like painting, or yeah, to your point, it's intuition led. No one's going to tell you it's wrong because it's coming out of you, like, no, like it's definitely authentic. And yeah, so that's exactly
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I love also when you talked about the layoff, because what I find when people are going through layoffs is they try to jump into the next thing. Like, we immediately go into fight or flight because usually it's a traumatic experience, and people will start applying to jobs. And it takes time and space and safety to be able to ask yourself, what do I want to do? And then use it in an expansive way. Usually people tighten up their grip on it and they're like, I want to control the outcome. And it sounds like you really opened up during that time to what's possible. What do you want to do?
Yeah. Well, it was still scary, but I made sure to dedicate. I was like, okay, I'm going to spend 4 hours in the mornings job searching, updating my portfolio, my resume. And I dedicated myself to the second half being, okay, and this is my time. What can I do with it? And I think it is part of that, right? If I were to spend like 8 hours a day stressing out, I don't think I would have survived, those layoff times. I was laid off for, yeah, a number of months. And it does get scary when you're like, oh, that income, like, I don't know if it's going to come back. I don't know how we're going to make things work. But I would say, like, I definitely like holding that space of just, okay, like, this is still my time. I own this time. I think it was a mindset I had to remind myself to get out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's shifting from scarcity mindset to
Yeah.
abundance-based mindset. Yeah. We talked a little bit about how your creativity has changed over time. I know that you've written and spoken about seasons of creativity. Is that kind of the theme that you're describing as you talk about your relationship over the years?
Yeah, it's when I look back, there was definitely, in my early adulthood and early 20s where I felt I had to be, moving forward all the time, doing all the things all the time, right? So, in order to transition, for instance, of the 9 to 5 I currently had into a more creative design type role, I was out there, doing side projects, creating my portfolio, doing night classes. It was a lot of work. And then, even when I got into design itself, I was doing like, different clubs, mentoring, and so on. A few years ago, I hit my breaking point on that. I remember I was probably doing, I would say like 5 projects at once, right? In addition to a full time job and being a mom of two. And I remember distinctly, I was on a board of a nonprofit that I helped start, and our meeting was running over, and this was usual. And I was actually taking the call at my in law's house celebrating my daughter's 6th birthday party. And everyone was waiting for me to wrap up that call. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. This is not the kind of mom I want to be. This is not sustainable. And then around that same time, I had started getting health issues, and it took a while to like get them diagnosed. Like doctors are like, what's going on and all this stuff. And I think just like putting those two pieces together made me realize I just need to step back. Like all this time and efforting, even if I enjoyed doing these things, was not worth it. And I leaned back. And I think when you lean back and pause on that momentum, at least for me, I paused everything. And it was kind of hard to get back on. And at that time, I feared, oh crap, like what did I do? Like I was doing all the things I enjoyed, and now I feel lost again. And then I started cultivating the habit of like, writing a Substack once a month or finding out like tiny outlets for creativity. And I think that's where I realized like I never really lost it. And maybe it just looks different over the years. Like some years will be like, maybe I'm doing like 80% like creativity, all the things I love. And then other years, it's okay if like momming takes over, soccer practice, all the other parts of life I want to invest in. And that's where, like when in the macro vision, when you zoom out, like that's life. That's the beauty of life. Like it could cut, like seasons could be months, seasons could be years. I'm still doing the things I enjoy. It might just look different.
Yeah. I use like a dial metaphor, and it sounds like the creativity is like dialing it up or dialing it down. Earlier in
Yeah.
your career, dialed up, doing all the projects, the things, children, career changes, life, dialing it down. It's still there, but it's not on zero.
I love that metaphor. Yeah. Because once again, it's, if I thought of it as a dial, then I wouldn't have that fear. But I really thought like, oh no, like I'm so unmotivated now. Like none of these things bring me joy. What brings me joy? I want that person back who like just knew exactly what she wanted. And I realize now like it's because, those things evolve. Like there are still parts like I definitely don't paint or write as much as I used to. But yeah, lately, just over the last month, I've started a habit again of just free writing 15 minutes a day. I use Chat GPT. I think that's a great way to use Chat GPT. Like, give me a list of prompts around this topic, and that way I'm not looking at a blank space. But I'm free writing on things that I just want to think more deeply about.
And especially as a mom, I mean, I'm 5.5 months in right
Still,
now.
you're a mom.
I Yeah, the shift of time and having the time for yourself, whether it's creative or even thinking, it's so hard. It's like you have to intentionally schedule that in. And I always say my alone time is like my air. Like that 15 minutes to just write on a piece of paper. I need it or else I'll go crazy. And like if that's
Yes.
what your creativity looks like for this season,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've gone to the extent at times, so especially with painting, like closing my door, blocking not only a few hours on my calendar, but like making an announcement to the whole household.
Yeah.
Like, do not
Yeah.
bother me for the next 2 hours. Don't come in until like 2:30. I am going to be painting, and I've learned to not feel guilty about that because, that's something where like I think as moms, there is this guilt for taking time for yourself. And the way I've reframed that is, my kids are seeing me doing something I enjoy. I support them with the things they enjoy. they know that mom also has things she enjoys that doesn't always require them to be around, and I think that's healthy. And, I don't know. That's just like my,
It
my,
is. Yeah, you have to fill up your own cup before you can fill up
yeah,
theirs too. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. Do you ever do art or creative work with your children?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ever since they were like 2, 3, getting them finger paints, just covering, the kitchen table and letting them have at it. I've even let them use some of my expensive paints at times. I'm like, this is okay. It's for their benefit. So they've definitely dabbled in that. I don't think they've picked it up as much as I have, but I'll see them draw, or they'll write their own little comic books, and they
Oh,
tap
I
into
love
their,
that.
yeah, creativity in different ways. They've made their own characters. They do like acting, dancing. Sometimes they put together talent shows. So I see it
Oh,
manifest in different ways, which is really fun. Yeah, I think,
yeah.
yeah, they're 8 and 10 now. So I think it's a super fun age to see
Oh my
just
gosh.
what they come
Yeah.
up with.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know why when you were speaking, what came to me was a children's book. I could totally see
Oh,
you. Yeah.
you know what? One of my side projects, I haven't gone too deep into it, is a children's book for adults. So it's kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
a
Yeah.
story. And it's funny, actually, like when I read kids' books sometimes, I'm like, the message is very much for the parents too. So I think there is something there.
Yeah, my husband and I, because we're reading more children's book now for our son, we like he had this idea of like a YouTube channel of like rating children's books because some of them are really great,
Oh,
right?
some of
Some of
them are
them
horrible.
like
I Love You
some of them are
Forever,
bad.
horrible. I don't know. That's my personal, like, I can't.
Yeah, yeah. Or even like some that like were my favorite growing up. There's like the one about the fish who like took off its scales and gave it to everyone else. I'm like, that's people pleasing. This
Or
book is all about
Giving
people.
Tree is like that
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's
It's
like
the same thing. Like this tree gives and gives until there's no more tree, and you're like, oh no.
yeah. Like I don't want my son listening
Exactly.
reading
Yeah. I'm
this.
like, what lessons are we really teaching?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But I digress. I could talk about children's books all day
Oh my
long.
gosh. If you put that YouTube channel up, let me know. I'll send you my list of banned books. Just kidding.
Yeah. It's so funny. Shifting a little bit, I'm curious about, especially as a design manager and someone who is creative and a designer in your own life, what have you seen around identity and creativity? Because I think that is something like when we're creating something, I feel like a piece of us gets almost embedded in it, and it's almost hard to extract identity or feel viscerally when we get feedback on it. And I'm curious what your perspective and what you've seen with direct reports or folks that you might coach with as well, or even your own journey.
Yeah, I think both of my own journey and where I've seen it most is when I've been mentoring junior designers or, folks out of college starting their first design jobs. It's the reason where one, yeah, definitely mindset, right? It's don't take the critique personally. It's about the work, it's not you. How do you start to separate yourself from what you're producing? Which I think, just as any creative, I've heard, I can't remember the direct quote, but it's along the lines of, we know in our heads, in our vision, what we aspire to do or to create. Our level of craft as a beginner is not quite there yet, right? So I think you just have to remember that, like, there is this frustration as a creator yourself showing this thing, and you're like, I know it could be better, but how? So I think that's where a lot of it happens in the early stages. As I've continued on my own design journey, and where I can start to tell the seniority levels of, folks I interview, is how they go about navigating that, whether it's with stakeholders, whether it's with collaborators, their product manager, engineering partners, is how do you get to the solution that you launch with, right? And, the more senior you are, the more experience you gain. You talk about the work as the work. You talk about the problem you're trying to solve, why you're trying to solve it. And I think that's the mindset shift, is what you're doing is contributing as a designer in your way, in your role of how to solve the problem, just as an engineer does, as a product manager does, right? As a designer, I think what makes us different is we have 1,000 solutions to choose from. So what do we say no to and what do we say yes to does get judged more than, I mean, there's probably only how many ways to code? You know, like, I don't know, like, yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
not as many. Or to write like a requirement stock also has some creativity, but it has a lot of input from a lot more people. And because design's so visual, right? And we all see, you know, you also get that feedback, but in a way that feels more abstract, right? Like, this doesn't feel right. There's too much white space. And you're like, yeah. And also, da da da, right? I'm also trying to solve for these 5 problems. And yeah, so I think the two easiest things I go back to when I was once again mentoring junior designers, and even for myself, is one, you never go with the first solution you come up with, and always show more than one solution. Like, show 2 or 3. Most likely what will happen is everyone you show it to will want bits and pieces of like
Yeah.
A and
And
C
combine it into
and
one.
combine it.
Yeah.
But I think what that also does is it removes you personally from the equation. Or yes, you thought of all these ideas. Therefore, you're not being judged by the one idea you brought to the table. It's
Yeah.
you produced all these ideas. Some are better than others. Some work better to solve this problem than others do for these reasons, right? Technical constraints or business, you know, like business needs. But yeah, I think that's where I've learned that design is the filter I'm going through is how I select and how I feel confident
Yeah.
about the way I go about problem solving. But the work itself isn't a representation of me. It's a mix of best practice, of experience, of what we've learned from our users. And it's all that together. And then, you know, and I think another safe space is to share it with other designers first and get their feedback. And once again, it's just more perspectives. And then what you're trying to do is communicate out the perspective you feel most strongly about. And then once again, it's like, I am not
I love
that.
that. It's the distancing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The few things that I heard from you as you were describing it is like patience with yourself as you're designing, and then patience throughout the design process and with your stakeholders when you're getting feedback and all of that. Because I find like you mentioned craft in the early stages, you have this vision and you get frustrated, and it's like, be patient with yourself. You're not gonna, like, boil the ocean at the very beginning or throughout the process, and, like, part of design is the journey and the iterations along the way to get that out into the wild.
Exactly. It's a process, right? It's not like an unveiling of like, ta-da, you know, here's what I did. Do you like it or not? You know, and that's why they say bring other people early on, right? Then they can also contribute to the solution, see themselves in it, and then, I mean, they're sailing that way too. It's definitely, design should never be a siloed, you know, you're off on your
Agreed.
own. Good art, yes. I think good art and good writing. Hole yourself up and then unveil it.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
design, no. There's too many cooks in
Yeah.
the kitchen. Like, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably why I leaned more into research too. I always it's funny when I go through interviews and I'm going through qualitative data, I have this hoodie that I put on and I'm like, I'm in my bubble. I have my hoodie. I'm coding data.
Yes.
Like, leave me alone.
See, that's what I like. Yeah, yeah. I remember a researcher I used to work with, just like literally like after, you know, a set number of interviews, it was synthesis time and she just blocked out her whole calendar and just like hid. Yeah. Hide from the people.
Yes. You talked a little bit about mentoring designers. You recently transitioned into coaching. I'm curious what kind of motivated that. I wouldn't say it's a transition. It's like a step in the journey. How did you move into that direction? Yeah.
Yeah. So 4 or 5 years ago, I encountered my own transition where I had been an IC for 12, 13 years at the time. And I was finally at the right life stage. Like my kids were old enough where I was like, I want to be a manager. And then I kind of hit that glass ceiling at the company I was at. They're like, oh, well, maybe we can give you an intern or something for the summer. You know, I'm like, no, like I want to like manage a team. And then I remember just feeling stuck at that time. And I actually went both to find a mentor on ADP list and I got a career coach. I bartered services. It was really cool. Like she needed support with her website. I needed support with
Oh,
like, what do
nice.
I do next? So I got my own career coach. And honestly, within a few months, I gained the confidence. Like both with the career coach and with my mentor, they were telling me like, you have what it takes already to be a manager. Here are ways like to reframe both, you know, your messaging and interviews, and then with my mentor, how I could update my resume to frame it as such. And then, yeah, within that next week, I got, two recruiters, like contacting me for director level roles. And I think I saw the power of coaching in that instance where I was doing all the things, but you can sit with yourself in it or have someone accountable to you. I mean, granted, she didn't actually care if like I did the thing or not, but like just that encouragement and just being like, yeah, like you're doing the thing already, or what do you think? Da, da, da. Just like those reflection questions really helped me. And at the end of our sessions, I, landed the job. I was already a few months in. I kind of shared that with her. I was like, like I really see the power of coaching, and I'm considering like eventually doing coaching myself. And she like encouraged me. She's like, I could see you as being a great coach. And what I found, like I took a foundational coaching class last year that shared the frameworks of coaching, and I think it just once again like started to give me a broader toolkit or expansion of the things I've already done through mentorship, through you know leadership in volunteering environments. And it just gave me an unlock of like how to ask more powerful questions in different ways. I'm like, oh, I've never thought of that. So I think that's what encouraged me to pursue like actual like certification is, how can I get more practice in framing things this way? Because when you mentor through, that a designer wants to find a new job, or as a manager, you know exactly what to coach towards, right? Like
Yep.
you want to
Yep.
keep them
Yeah.
in their same job, but you want them to be more productive or more efficient, or you know. So I think what I enjoy about just coaching, right, even outside the context of work, is it's a lot easier to touch upon the other parts of life. Yeah, which gets kind of uncomfortable. Like I'm not going to pry in my direct reports, personal lives. They'll share what they want to share. But I think with coaching clients outside of work, it's easier to tell that narrative of here's how all these pieces contribute to you as a whole
Yeah.
person, which also could be impacting work and also could be
Yep.
impacting how you're viewing the rest of these pieces. So I thought that was pretty
Yeah, it
cool.
sounds more holistic with your clients outside of work. And then it gets dicey when it's internally when you're doing coaching because you're basically holding multiple hats. You're coaching, so coaching hat, and then you're directly responsible for evaluating your employees and the outcomes of the work and all of that. And it can get, and then you have your own desires for them and
Exactly.
beliefs, which
Yes.
may like,
Which could be
yeah,
at tension in times, right? So yeah, I think
yes,
that's a
yeah,
challenge. Like coaching at work, it's like I can coach you through a project. Like, oh, what
yep,
made you, go this way instead of that way? And then,
yeah,
with coaching outside of work, it's like, well, tell me, what is your life vision? Like, if you could do
yeah,
anything you wanted. So it's
yeah,
just,
yeah,
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 it's just so much more broad. And that's, I think, back to the intuition, the expansion, the that growth mindset feeling. I feel a lot more of it through, yeah, coaching outside of the constraints. Once again, it's like design versus art.
absolutely. I'm curious about because you mentioned your transition into coaching was in part because of your experience with a coach and then the transition into director. What was kind of the biggest shift when you moved from individual contributor to a leadership director manager type role?
Yeah, I would sum up just being a manager as a combination of people, processes, and projects. I think the biggest thing, and I knew this, so I'd say like throughout my IC career, I've always been curious about leadership and coaching. I've read so many books, and that's kind of when I was like, and I'm ready, and like just give me the chance. When I became a manager, I was already comfortable with the idea of delegating and kind of letting go of I'm not the one to solve the problem. I'm solving it through my team,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
it's my responsibility to help guide the team to this like shared alignment, shared vision of what does high quality look like? What does this final end result look like when we put all of our effort together? And I what I try to do at least once or twice a year is get the team to go through some team building exercise, through mission realignment, like what is our purpose as a product design team at this company? What do we know about our users? What have we learned since the last time we did this? And just coming up with shared principles, shared how do we work together, things like that. So I think it's really thinking of the team as like, I don't say like extensions of myself, but like extensions of, or like just how do we norm together? How do we move about this company together? How do we get clarity around that? I think one of the biggest things I've learned, and I don't think I've quite figured it out yet, and I think every design leader goes through this too, is finding that right balance of translating business needs with user
Yep.
goals. And,
Yeah.
like, especially at a startup, like it's very rocky at times, right? Like, I mean, you do cater to like, what are we learning about our customers? And, you're not always the team to get that information first. And then when things shift, it's like, how do we make the narrative so that projects that we move away from, we're just shelving. We're not throwing it
Yep.
away.
It's a
That
backlog.
work, that
Yeah.
exactly, that work is still valid and it's good. It's just not what's needed right now. So I think it's just kind of like steering the ship in a way that everyone's on that, still on the ship, not like falling off or like, what
Yeah.
are we doing anymore? I think those were some of my biggest learnings is just a lot of communication, a lot of transparency, and making sure like everyone feels their work is still valued, even if if it's deprioritized, like let's make sure you're working on what is the highest priority or what matters for the company.
Yeah, it sounds like the systems that enable the work to get done, which is a lot. There's different people, product processes that enables the work to get done. And I know in each level too, when you're in manager, director, the scope, those systems will change. So
Yes.
shifting back to talking about your coaching practice, tell us a little bit. You talked at a high level about Swishy and your vision for that. Yeah, tell us a little bit more. I would love to hear how that's going.
Yeah, I think the first time I described it to you when you asked for the blurb, I was like modeling with like ChatGPT, like how do I describe Swishy like in like a succinct way? Because it's been a lot of different things for me over the years. It's been my side project for almost a decade now, but its evolution has happened in different ways. So it came up with like a cozy little corner of inspiration. I'm like, I love that. So that's what it is. I mean, it's a place for inspiration. It's a place for me to get my thoughts out. And, now with Gen AI, it's a way for me to quickly like figure out like different ways of connecting things I enjoy together. So, one of my latest like side projects is called Swishy Sparks. It's a virtual card deck where you just get prompts, and I'm playing around with just this. I'm envisioning like an arcade of sorts, but with like more inspirational, meaningful content. So I'm like, oh, like, could I make a board game out of, like, because I can't code that all by myself, but, like tools like Lovable help make it easier. So that's one of my side projects. Swishy in itself it's a combination of design thinking applied to life. It's how I, as a creativity coach, kind of play around with like the different philosophies I have and then the expression of those philosophies. So at one point, I have a 10 episode podcast. I have maybe 40 YouTube videos around
Oh, wow.
Swishy. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just like, and I think it's like to leave a legacy of like, what does it mean to be creative from like different perspectives? And lately, what I have been doing regularly is, monthly musings via Substack. So I have a life is iterative newsletter that I send out. And then coaching is, like my one-on-one outlet for helping other people navigate through that or tap back into their creativity when they feel like they've lost it. So that's like ultimately a theme. It's like, how do we reignite that spark? Like that spark is still within you. You just need that flicker to ignite yourself back up, right? Once again, like like if you're going through something like I did where you're traumatized about creativity or you're like, where did it go? Like you became a mother, where did it go? Or someone told you like this was crap and you're like, I'm not gonna paint for, like 20 years or anything like that. Like is it a quiz? So I've added like what is your creative personality quiz to my website, right? You could book a session. I'm still playing around. Like I'd love to do workshops at some point when my calendar dies down. But like, and
I just
then
want to acknowledge, like, you said, I'm not doing as many side projects in this phase of my life.
yeah, that's I mean, oh gosh.
And you have what you're describing. Well, one, I want to acknowledge what you're describing seems like such a natural progression from your own journey to now doing creativity coaching and a blending of all of these things. You talk about the quiz, the YouTube channel, a former podcast, one-on-one coaching. It is a portfolio of offerings
That is,
that
yes.
has formed over the years. And like maybe I love the way that you talked about the evolution of Swishy because you're like, oh, I knew I wanted it to be this thing, but over the years it has formed into this portfolio that you have. And the next decade, I'm sure it will
Oh
continue
yeah.
to evolve. Yeah, but oh my gosh.
Yeah, but in hindsight, right? Like I think when I started out, it was a game. It was supposed to be like a walkthrough narrative. You're like a 30-year-old woman, and you have to make these decisions about, do you stay in your job or do you leave it? And it was going to be like a very much like text-based, like choose your own adventure. So it was that for a bit, and then I made a friend out of it. It was really random. And then it evolved into, yeah, some of these other things. And at the time when I started it, I felt like I failed. Like the moment I paused that project, I was like, oh, that wasn't it. What else is it? But I still kept the name Swishy. And yeah, now like I can see it as a portfolio. And I think that's the biggest moment for me is once again, right? You never lose that creativity. It manifests in different ways. It's evolved because I've evolved different things. I become curious about different things and I don't want to be doing 100 things anymore. So yeah, I don't do the podcast or the YouTube videos anymore, but they're still there now. They still exist in the internet.
It's so beautiful. One thing I'm curious about is you have these projects, and this is a leading question because of my own experience, but
I like how you like call that out.
um, I'm leading, but I'm curious your experience because at least from what we've seen in a lot of workplaces, there's been this up and down over the last few years. With COVID, workplaces really encourage people like take on the side projects, make work for you. With back to office over the last few years, it's very much been like, no, we own your time. I'm curious, what has your experience been with maintaining like your full-time job with these side projects? Has it ever become like contentious? Like they tell you, no, don't do this stuff. I know I have my own journey, and there's people out there who have been told not to work on side projects or harness their creativity as well. So,
I haven't encountered that yet, especially in my current job. So we're all fully remote. I think there's several people who do some like side projects. I've been very clear, like, like I have my work time and then I've always done this, not just for this company, but I think just throughout my whole career, I carve out time, evenings or weekends or early mornings to pursue a lot of these things or like lunch breaks, right? I also have become more flexible and like, oh, like I spent an hour on this, it's like the equivalent of like feeling like I still got a sufficient amount of work done for the day. So I think that's one thing is just like knowing I'm not offsetting one thing with like something
yeah,
else,
yeah,
but it is like
yeah.
carving out time. So I think that's one piece is like just mentally knowing like I'm not cheating one way or the other. Or, I think the other piece is I've been pretty upfront, transparent with my manager, with my team, like, oh, I do coaching on the side. If you ever want like a coaching session, like let me know. Like I'll offer things like that for free in the past. Like I've done other brown bags or things like that. I think the last piece, yeah, I haven't struggled with it too much because it's out there. So what happened, I think recently was on LinkedIn. I joined like this group that like another department at my company follows. And they're like, oh, we saw you like get promoted in this group. And I was very much like framed like with Swishy as a creativity coach. And I was like, oh no, I feel exposed. But I mean, everyone was like fine with it. So I think it's that. I think the more transparent you can be and clear about where those boundaries are, right? Like I think that makes up for it. So yeah, I haven't had negative experiences, but then it's like I'm not doing another full-time job, right? Like I'm pretty
Yeah.
clear. I think the last piece I'll say here is a lot of like what I feel now like isn't to offset or to get more income now. I feel like for me, the pursuit of coaching, the pursuit of art or writing is like my time frame is like by the time my kids move out of the house, like what do I want to do as my, like full-time job, or what would I do after I retire? And a lot of my aspirations are towards how do I not lose myself during this time to when that happens? Not so
Yeah.
much like, oh, I'm gonna like jump ship now and like I
Yep.
need to get like
Yeah.
20 clients to like have my own business. But yeah.
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 An important differentiation. And I'm glad that you've had that experience with your workplaces, because all of these things are parts of you. We talked about the identity shift,
Yeah.
but it's about honoring parts of you and not having to mask them when you go to work or shut them
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
and because I don't present it as like I'm doing another full-time job, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, on
yeah.
the side, I also do coaching. And a lot of it is, and I think it comes back to this. It's because I enjoy what I do as a designer too. I think if I really hated my job or it was a toxic environment, I would rather leave than try and lean so far back
Yeah.
and pursue the other things, right? Like to me, that feels inauthentic. And and I know like situationally, like people might not have the flexibility, right, to do that at the moment, but I've been at this point pretty intentional about the jobs I pursue, and it's like one of those non-negotiables. Like if I'm going to be working weekends or late nights, like no, like that would not work for me. Or if I couldn't work remotely, that would not work for me because of both family obligations and how I express my creativity. Like I am not going to spend time on a 2-hour commute each way,
No.
like
Nope, nope,
no.
nope. I love that. We've talked about creativity going hand in hand with curiosity. Is there anything that you've been curious about lately?
Oh, so many things. I think you can ask me this like every week. I would say something different. Actually, funnily enough, the reason I scheduled today so early was I was hoping I had enrolled in a glass fusing class. I took a glass blowing class late last year, and I was like, ooh, I love glass, like as a medium. And then they canceled the class. So now I'm like, how do I like learn this in a different way? Like it's not something you can really learn at home. So like creatively, like, yeah, I think glass art is definitely one of those biggest, like, how do I do more of that, like in a safe way? How do I learn how to do that? And then what I'm curious about, I think just like in a broader context, is definitely the impact of AI and creativity. For me, like when I write, I mentioned like I create prompts, but I'm still doing the writing myself. I think how else would you do that? I think generating a book completely from AI is like, why would you even? Right. But it's good as a tool, but not as like the creative mechanism itself. And, I think it's just how will this impact us, down the line? And just even a few years from now, we're seeing the impacts on education, on, people's livelihoods being impacted. And I think my hope for technology has always been, oh, it's going to give me more time to pursue the things I want to do. And I'm like, why hasn't that been true yet? Like,
Yeah.
and when will it? Because I would
Yes.
love to spend more time doing other things and not just, like 40 hours a week on work. If other
Yep.
tools can do it faster, like, why are we not having like 10-hour work weeks now? So anyway, this is
I could, yeah, I could give a whole dissertation.
I know for another podcast. No.
Yeah,
But
love
yeah,
it.
so I think those are some of my musings is creativity in the time of AI, is glass for personal life. And yeah, I think I'm always going to follow like that curiosity. So next thing
Yeah,
comes along, I'm
yeah,
like, how do I
I
do
love
that?
that.
Or yeah.
Yeah, amazing. How can people connect with you, get in touch with you if they want to after this episode?
Yeah, definitely visit swishy.com. That's SWISHIE.com. And you can see the many evolutions, or the current evolution of what I'm creating today. Or you can reach me at Lia at swishy.com. And then I also have my Substack. So if, you want to see some of my musings, I'll talk about my kids or I'll talk about some moment I've had once a month. So it's not that frequent. Check out swishy.substack.com.
Thank you so much, Lia. It was so lovely to have you.
Likewise. Thanks, Roberta. This was so fun.
Thanks for being here. If something in this episode landed with you, feel free to pass it along to someone who might need it too. You can leave a review, subscribe, or just keep tuning in. We're figuring it out together. And remember, your story, your voice, your becoming, it all matters.